All right. Well, I get to be the one to welcome everybody today. We are doing a kind of a different kind of Zoom than what we normally do. Normally, we get together to talk about our haikus. And today we're going to talk about haikus, but instead of sharing haikus and our haibun, our reflections, we have a big announcement to make. Should we tell them what our announcement is?
I think you should. Yeah, I think we should tell them. Let's tell them.
Amy should tell them.
Amy should tell them. Did you see how I went out of focus when I got excited there?
Woo. All right. So our big announcement is we have written a book. We have put together our haikus from August 2020 to August 2021. All of our haikus, all of our reflections, and we've put them in a book that we're releasing, where it's called Framing the Moment, Haiku Conversations, and it's available on Amazon. So we hope if you've enjoyed listening, you'll go back and purchase the book and read some haikus that you've either heard before or hear again. You'll be able to also access our playlist of all of the haiku conversations. Do you want to show them where they will be able to do that, Michael?
Sure. So the repository for the haiku videos is where we post them each month. And so on the Profound Living site, which profoundliving.live, just if anybody ever wants to go there. But if you ever want to see any of the videos, come over here to more, come down to Haiku Narratives, and you will see, actually you'll see all of our videos, not just the book, but all of our videos are posted there, and you can go through there. You can also get them on YouTube on a playlist, on one of my playlists, but this is going to be a lot easier and prettier.
And in the book, we have links so you can follow. In the Kindle, it'll be easy. You'll be able to just push the link and it'll take you right there to YouTube. But also in the book, there'll be directions on how to at the end of each section, see what we were talking about or see the haiku postcards. So, and
if you haven't seen any of the videos, just so you know, they're about 25, 30 minutes. And it's a lot of repartee, a lot of persiflage, a lot of banter. We learn new words in this process. So we have a lot of fun. So if no one else has a lot of fun, we have a lot of fun.
We've had a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Well, so I thought that would be interesting to have a little bit of a different kind of conversation today. And so we talked about answering. I have a question for each of you, and I'll answer it as well. But I'd love to hear what you feel like has been a lesson or a change in your life from the practice of writing haikus. Davin, you want to go first?
I'll interject that this is unlike our haiku and our haibun reflections. This is completely unscripted and unprepared. So you're getting the authentic response here. So
they don't know that. They don't know that. Theater, you never let them know. You just never let them know. This is completely scripted. You've got this planned out, outlined A through Z.
I'm counting on suspension of disbelief. So aside from simply counting syllables more often than I ever thought I would, and my kids would often walk into the room and see me going and counting syllables, trying to fit words in to make it work. So I think a real lesson has been synchronicity. So synchronicity. So as I sit it's more than once a month, but when we come together once a month, and just the way it all comes together. So I've always believed in that synchronicity was a thing, and that there's real synergy that happens when people do things together. I don't know that I've ever experienced it quite the way that it manifests itself with us, and it's become more of a thing in my life. So thinking about valuing the je ne sais quoi, the dynamic element the whole is greater than the sum of its parts that happens when people do things together, whether it's a meal or exercise or a reading group, or haiku. So just a real appreciation for, I don't know, I'm kind of a solipsist. I like to be alone. I'm an introvert. So for me, it's a profound expansion of my self-understanding.
That's so great. So I know the synchronicity, that's a really good point. It always surprises me how there's never a theme. We never even talk between our sessions.
Right.
And yet there's sometimes the themes are just like overwhelmingly present.
Shocking.
Yeah. Yeah. And even in our responses, you know, the way that I'll respond to yours or you to mine or Michael's, all of us are just like, whoa.
Yeah.
What about you, Michael?
Just to follow that conversation a little bit and build on a little bit. So what Davin said about the communal part of it has been fascinating to me, just because I've been in book discussion groups and this and that, but this is a combination of participating solely and then participating communally and how that works. And then also the last part, which is a fun part, is also then sharing it with others outside even us. And so that's always fun. We have an audience of 3, that's us, and then maybe a relative or 2. I don't know. I guess one of the things I've learned about writing haikus really started with, and we've all read this book, The Art of Pausing by Judith Valente and Father Paul Quignon and Michael Beaver. Read this book, and not even after I read this book, when I started reading this book, I started writing a haiku a day. And then ever since then, it's been 2 or 3 years now, I've written a haiku a day. And it's recommended that we do that in this book, and then it's recommended that we get together and share them. And so we've done that too. So we owe a lot to this little book right here. But just to finish this thought, that's become a practice of mine. I do it every morning. And then putting the haiku together and sharing it with each other is part of the practice each month. And so that really grounds me in every morning doing something. Sending a haiku to someone every day is what I do. Is just part of my personal practice. And it's changed me in a lot of ways because it's built other skills, as that's happened. So it's really been very meaningful to me, very, very.
You have ghosts in your house, Michael.
So your ghost just joined you. You're like the inspiration. I was really good for a while about writing a haiku every day, but I certainly don't do that now. It has just, I get distracted by so many other things. But in terms of me, the thing that I've learned, or the lesson from writing haiku, is just, it goes back to, I think, the title of our book, Framing a Moment. Like 17 syllables requires you to distill the absolute essence of what is happening. And then it's interesting because we distill the essence and then we write the response, which we unpack it and just find so much more than was in that original moment. A friend of mine came over recently and she said, I want you to teach me how to write haikus. And I'm like, well, I don't know that I know how to do that. But she brought a picture. She lives in a assisted living kind of place. And it was 2 older women sitting at a mealtime together. And she had just snapped this picture and she's like, I want to write a haiku about that moment. And it was so beautiful. And it really brought home for me that idea of we're framing a moment, because we talked about what is the essence of that moment and what are the words to get to that moment. And so it just causes me to see the small things in life in a different way.
And the way it kind of unfolds, so it's an opening. It's 17 syllables. And it just opens things up. So you just made me think of this as you were talking, just the value of poetry. I have become such a big fan of reading poetry now, and almost strictly as a result. I mean, I've always, there are certain poets that I've enjoyed forever, but I haven't been a real big fan of poetry. But this practice has just changed it, because I've seen how the succinctness, it has power to it, to just, it just unfolds.
It's interesting, the multi-perspectivity of it. Just using that language just for a minute. Amy will look at something, then I'll look at what she wrote, the haiku she wrote, and I'll write something. There's a different perspective, and then Davin will write something, and then when we talk about it, there's a fourth, constructed learning right there between all of us. We're, we talk about 17 syllables. That's kind of the structure we use, but we're not stuck with it. But haikus have been around a long, long time, and 17 syllables is not written in stone by any means. But as beginners, I feel like I need to have some structure to what I'm doing. And we are really beginners when we think about this whole haiku history and how people have actually focused on that. But I didn't know anything about them. But Davin, I know you knew more than I did. You've used haikus in classes, haven't you? I mean, some people, I'm not sure if you both have probably known about haikus a lot longer than I have, but I didn't know anything about them. And now I'm enamored.
Yeah, and it's the whole idea that constraint creates meaning. So a lot of times we think about freedom as a lack of constraint, but that's really not true. And things like haiku, I think, really exemplify that when you've got this rather severe constraint, it in fact broadens your horizon more than limits it.
Well, isn't that the truth?
So so using it as a structure in a pedagogical setting, so take this idea, put it into 17 syllables, it can be a fun and useful thing to do.
Yeah. That's so good. Well, I have one last question as we are kind of talking about haiku, which this is so fun. We haven't ever had this conversation before, so it's really fun to have this conversation. Where do you get your inspiration for your haikus? I know that we each kind of approach it a little bit differently. Michael, tell us about where you get draw your inspiration from.
Well, haikus, I don't know if it's theoretically, traditionally have been about nature, the seasons, those types of things, and stay generally away from conceptual ideas or thinking about the future, but really focus on the present moment. And that really fits really well with, again, back to my morning practice, because I have such a distracted, peripatetic mind, a mind that goes. So meditating, having a contemplative practice every moment, and then morning, and then writing a haiku every morning really allows me to frame the moment. And so it's not even inspiration. I just try to pay attention. And so this has been the best thing in the world for me to learn how to pay attention. So when I'm taking a walk with the dogs, instead of thinking about, the next meeting, I'm thinking about, well, that leaf looks really interesting. That's an interesting leaf. And then you tie that together with photography and taking pictures. And then, oh, that tree, that's interesting colors on those leaves. And those, so I get my inspiration mostly from the natural world. Our dogs are the subject of many of my haikus. And it kind of depends on the season, whether I'm talking about the dogs inside the house or in the backyard. But those are the main things: the seasons, nature, what's close to me.
Presence, yeah. What about you, Davin?
So this is where I fail at orthodox haiku. So I struggle to write about concrete things. It's one of the reasons Michael and I write so well together. I think that he helps me. I often exist at the 30,000 foot level, and he's always pulling me down, saying, okay, come on, speak words that everybody else is gonna
I'm always
care
in
about.
the dirt. Is that what it is? I'm always.
Hummus, Michael.
Yeah,
You're
I was just gonna say that.
so, and I mean that in a somewhat self-critical way. So what really gets my juices flowing is thinking about concepts and ideas, and my haiku reflect that. And I think that it is not in line with what haiku traditionally is. So when I'm picking out haiku to share, I'm trying to find ones that have some concrete elements in it. But I really, for me, I go to principles for living. I go to scripture. My haiku so often comes out of scripture study and my prayer life, and family really is where for me my inspiration is.
I think I fall kind of in the middle of both of you. I definitely use nature as inspiration, but I also use like concepts. You know, I'm an avid reader. And so I oftentimes, if there's a line or a word in something that I'm reading that just like one of my haikus is ordinariness. And that word is like, to me, it's just an interesting word. And so if I see a word, or nourish, or I don't know, there's just words that then I want to explore the word more to understand the word and the meaning, or a phrase. There's a lot of times that I write my haiku and then I say it's inspired by this line of poetry or this line from something that I read.
Mm-hmm.
But it causes me to, like you, Michael, when you're out for a walk, when I'm reading something, I'm always like looking for what's going to catch my eye. What I always say, what's going to sparkle up and engage me. And then now with haiku writing, I have a way to explore it further than just say, oh, that's an interesting word. Now I have I need to write a haiku about that.
You know, it's interesting as you both are talking. The idea of writing poetry, any kind of time of writing poetry, really forces you to try to find the right word. Mm-hmm. And so I think that writing poetry, and in this case, even more it's not even more structured than other forms of poetry, but the structured shorts forces you to really think about what the right word is. And you can dash it off, and I've dashed off many, and you can spend a lot of time thinking what that right word is, and then reading everybody else's, and then trying to figure out how to articulate what you think about what you just read they wrote, and even what you wrote. You know, I learn more about what I wrote when I'm writing about it than when I wrote it, maybe sometimes. So anyway, and now I'm rambling, as is typical.
No, it's all so good. It's so interesting. Well, is there anything else we want to add to this discussion on haikus, or any questions that have come up that for you guys as we've been talking?
I would just say that added to the things I listed for my inspiration, it's the two of you. So I learn a ton from each of you, and have really just grown to love our time together once a month. So I am grateful for this and for the both of you.
I think it goes, all of us feel that same way. It's just the highlight of my month. I tell people it's so random. It's so random. These two people that I don't even really know how I got to know them, that now like we just do this thing. It's so weird. So good.
You know, the last thing there's nothing I do that's more fun than this. I mean, it's just fun, you know, it's just fun and meaningful. Do we want to say anything about where they can get the book, when they can get the book, or any of those kind of things? They'll probably be posted I know they'll be posted on Profound Living, and you also, we haven't mentioned your letter and your site, Amy, we ought to do that as well, plus Amazon, I think.
Yes.
So
our book it's available on Amazon. It's called Framing the Moment. You can look up any of our names or Framing the Moment and you will find it. Like I said, we have a print version and a Kindle version. Honestly, as I've been working on putting them together, the print version is kind of designed a little bit different because the print version gives you space to write your own haiku and interact. Both of them are designed to cause you to write your own haiku or find something in the text that's meaningful. But the book actually gives you space to write your own haiku or to write a reflection and to really engage further. So it'll be almost like a workbook or journal type thing.
So we ought to get off this session pretty quick because I think other people might start popping in here. If we're not
Okay.
careful.
All right. Good. Good.
But
and
I
so
want to
you'll
say
have
before we get out of
links.
here, Davin and I both need to say thanks to Amy. She's really put this whole book together. She's main editor. She's, we've helped a little bit, but she's really done it. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So let's get out of here. It's a pleasure working with y'all and hope y'all enjoy the book.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.